I'm Dee Barnes, and next on The Frequency, join me and my guest Monifa Bandele and organization Moms Rising, and we talk about all the work they're doing. Right here on The Frequency, it starts now. Greetings and welcome to The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes. Today, we're going to be talking about taking on critical issues for women, mothers, and families. And I have the perfect guest for that. This is the Senior Vice President of Moms Rising, an organization which tackles all those issues that we're about to get into. And I am talking to Monifa Bandele.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes. I am so honored to have you. I am so interested in Moms Rising. When I first heard it, I was like, this is the perfect title. And then looking into your website to seeing all the things you do. But I want to first start with you because it takes a certain person to, get into activism. And usually they have a particular background. And when I was doing research on you, I found out that your father was a Black Panther. So I really want to get into where did you grow up and what led you on this path? So please walk us through that.
Oh, absolutely. I love talking about it because a lot of times we get a chance to talk about our work,
right?
But we don't talk about the legacy which our work stands on. Yes. And all of the work that we're doing now really stands on the powerful work of organizations like SNCC, the Black Panther Party, the Republic of New Africa. And so as a child growing up in a home of activists in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, I got to hear and watch and listen to people talking about these issues of social justice. But more importantly, I got the inspiration from our parents' generation who were young people at that time, in their 20s and their teens, who really believed that they were about to change the world. I mean, when you talk to activists from the 60s and 70s, they built schools. We went to independent Black schools. We had African names. They built food co-ops. And they did things that showed us as children that we have the power to build the communities that we want to live in.
Right.
Now, of course, they were hit with a lot of backlash. My father was a member of the Black Panther Party. I have uncles and aunts that were in the Republic of New Africa. And those organizations became under attack and many of them shut down. But the work that I do today is definitely inspired by that and is built on that legacy.
What was one of your earliest memories of doing activism work? And I'm not talking about like your parents per se, or maybe you were helping them, but what was one of your first things that an issue that you wanted to tackle, and how old were you at the time?
Absolutely. So first I want to say that in the 80s, my mom helped lead a tenant strike in Brooklyn.
Oh, I remember those.
Yes, it was one of the largest tenant strikes in New York City's history at that time, where they organized multiple buildings that were owned by one slumlord. Mm-hmm. And so helping her and going to those meetings and seeing a lot of Black and brown women organizing fiercely against these men would show up in trench coats looking like mobsters, and they did not back down on their demands. And so I was able to kind of like help out as a kid then. Right. But I really stepped into my own activism in the 90s, like many people, mm-hmm. with the beating of Rodney King. Our college campuses went up, we protested. It was kind of like coming full circle. It's like, I know this. I know that I have to step into this work. I watched my parents work around everything from tenant rights to divesting from South Africa. Remember that? Right. Those fights. And so hearing it in the background, planting the seeds, mm-hmm. when it came time for us as now young adults to mobilize, I'm 10 toes to the front because I know this is my responsibility, just like it was a responsibility of my parents. And so that's my earliest memories is organizing a march. We were actually back here in New York City. I went to undergrad in Atlanta, but I was in New York at the time.
Right.
With many schools all over Manhattan, and we marched down Broadway to Wall Street when the mm-hmm. verdict came, and we said, basically, if we can't get justice, there'll be no peace. And I remember the stock exchange closing down.
Oh, yes.
All of these young people had converged here in Lower Manhattan, right there on the corner of Wall and Broadway. And that was a powerful moment for me, and it just kept going.
Wow, we have something similar. I mean, I didn't have the Black Panthers in my family, but I was so aware of them. I had a lot of family members that were in the Nation of Islam.
Yes.
So they did a lot of things in the community, and my mom was part of these like book clubs or meetings. I remember the kids would be in the room playing, and all the parents would be in the living room, you know, exchanging knowledge and sharing these books. And actually, my first instance of that was watching my mom organize something. She used to work at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And she organized something amongst the administrators. And I remember seeing her do that and get together. And then later on, she participated in the Urban League. We had moved to New Jersey. And then for me, it was just like you said, I think the 90s, I came into my own. I used to consider myself, you know, back in the day with my hip hop background, a raptivist.
Right.
That was.
Oh, I remember.
Yes.
I followed.
Right. Oh, you remember? Oh, embarrassing. We used to, you know, do a lot of things about the community. And this is one of the topics that I get into. And that's why I love having, you know, guests like you on the show, because I feel like there's this sense of community is missing from, you know, African Americans in general. I know in particular with hip hop, it seems to be missing. It started off as a sense of community, and now it's more capitalism.
Well, we're going to have to compare notes, because my mom was also in hospital administration at Cumberland Hospital. I don't know if you remember that closed down, but she had friends at Kings County, and she was in the social worker circle. So we're going to definitely
have to do that. And now, since we're talking about mothers and the influence that they have on us, which is, you know, so critical to any child growing up, and, you know, the foundation and backbone of the family. Please tell us about Moms Rising.
Absolutely. Moms Rising was created now 15 years ago, you know, and it came together really to protect and promote the rights of women and moms in the workplace. You know, we still experience huge pay disparities. You know, moms are making, depending on their ethnicity, anywhere from 66 to 77 cents on a dollar compared to a white male who has these same positions. Wow. And really came together around issues like that. But we've grown our work to incorporate things like maternal justice and reproductive rights, because all of this impacts our family economic security, right? I mean, we're living in a time where we were just talking about the 70s. Well, if you're like us, born in the 70s, our moms had more reproductive rights because Roe passed in the early 70s.
Right.
And our children and nieces and nephews, a generation right behind us, have today. Because of the fall of Roe with the Dobbs decision last year. So our work has really doubled down to protect the healthcare and rights of women and mothers especially. And especially because we're living in a country where it's actually the most dangerous place to give birth in the developed world. The United States has the highest maternal death rate.
United States? Compared to all the other countries? I mean,
the other developed countries, all the other wealthy nations in the world, the United States ranks last. So we have a maternal health crisis, and you're banning access to reproductive health care. Right. Those two things together, of course, who is it going to impact the most? Black women, Indigenous women, brown women, right?
And you know, poor women in particular.
Absolutely. If you live in rural areas, there's a maternal healthcare desert that's emerging because so many hospitals are closing in states that have not accepted Medicaid expansion under Obamacare. So, you know, there's just so many intersections here. And this is why we fight and build. And we've been winning. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. We definitely saw Roe fall last year with the Dobbs decision. But state by state, we're mobilizing moms to codify access to reproductive justice in those state constitutions. And we just had a win this week.
What was the win? What was the win this week?
So this week, voters in Ohio voted to amend the Ohio Constitution to protect abortion rights forever in that state. If you live in that state, you'll be able to get the reproductive health care that you need, in addition to abortion help, everything, family planning, birth control, pills, all that's under attack. So voters are protecting their rights on the state level. And it was huge. Moms Rising, we reached out to 75,000 voters. We did phone calls, text messages. We ran digital ads targeting those voters, reminding them, get out and vote. We have to protect our sisters, our children. We have less rights than our mothers, and that cannot stand.
That cannot stand. So for each state, you guys are mobilizing in each state as it comes up on the ballot, or things are happening now as we speak, as we do this interview?
Yes, so things are happening now as we do this interview, because United States is one of those places where each state, how you change the laws are different.
Right.
You know, like some states you can do a ballot initiative. Some states don't have ballot initiatives where voters can put a bill right on the ballot. And so it's kind of a hodgepodge of strategies. In some states, as soon as Roe fell, they automatically had a complete ban on abortion, right? About 20 states. And so it's really those local organizations, and we work with them, but the leadership is really on the ground. A lot of local groups, a lot of Black women-led organizations, right, who are figuring out a strategy to say, how do we protect in our state? Do we file a lawsuit? Do we put a ballot initiative on the state legislature's docket? You know, what do we do in our state based on our state laws to protect our children? And so we've been seeing state by state these wins. So we're working in places like Ohio. Last year, Kansas did a very similar ballot initiative.
Right.
Of course, I'm in New York, and you know, New York and New Jersey already protect abortion rights, but we're really looking at these other 20 states to change these abortion bans. Wow.
Okay, look, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about the other things that Moms Rising does. And in particular, I want to get into like the school issues with book bannings and things of that nature. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, come back right here, join us on The Frequency with my guest, Monifa Bandele.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Start Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back to The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my special guest, Senior Vice President of Moms Rising, Monifa Bandele. Welcome back, sister.
Thank you. Thank you.
During the break, I was just thinking of all of the things that we just talked about in regards to reproductive rights and what Moms Rising does. And at first, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do, the whole organization does, because just thinking about how you mobilize and was able to, you know, help that turnaround in Ohio, is incredible work. And I don't know, like a lot of activism is like almost like thankless work. People, they don't get the credit that they deserve. And I just want to take this moment to say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing and what the organization is doing.
Thank you.
It's incredible. I want to also get into the title of Moms Rising, because I know there's so many issues. I have so many questions, but who came up with that Moms Rising? The just a little bit of the background of the organization before we go further.
Yes, absolutely. It was founded by a group of women, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, who's out of Seattle, along with several other people came together and said, you know what we need? We need a national organization that really helps to mobilize moms, but that they can take action from where they are. We all know that if you have a family, if you have kids, it's very hard to show up on Capitol Hill or show up in your state house or go down to City Hall and make your voice heard, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're working and you're active in the schools. So they said, how can we create a platform that's similar to like moveon.org? Some similar platforms are like colorofchange.org, where people can take action right there from their laptop. They can write letters, they can sign petitions, they can make a few clicks and you patch them through so that they can make their phone call to their representative. And so they built this platform out. And one of the biggest things they worked on first was to help pass the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare.
Okay.
Moms Rising played a huge role in finding and mobilizing mothers who had children who had chronic illnesses. Because before, when you had chronic illnesses, you couldn't get health insurance.
Exactly.
You had pre-existing condition. Mobilize moms all over the country to share their stories and to pressure their members of Congress to help pass Obamacare. So that was one of our first big national campaigns.
Wow.
And we've been building on top of that ever since.
That's amazing, yo. Okay, so something you touched on there when you were saying about issues in school. It's been driving me crazy as far as the book banning. I can't believe we're in 2023. We're talking about banning books. Now, I know Moms Rising has got to be deep within our school systems, right?
You know we are. In fact,
thank God,
we're so deep in our school systems that the work that we have been doing is being copycatted by the right. So when you see groups like Moms for Liberty emerging, it's because the right said, hold up, we're all focused on national and state policy, but there's these organizations that are focused in the schools and running Moms for School Board and really building things from the ground up. When you see 25 million people take to the street in 2020 around racial justice issues, that's because there's been decades of work in schools and in colleges educating young people across all ethnicities, across all races about white supremacy, about mass incarceration. So when you see defund the police and you see millions of people out, this is the backlash, right? The progress that has been made by people pushing progressive things like, they act like it's a bad word, but critical race theory, right? Helping young people to understand and have a critical analysis of society, not just listing dates and facts and adding things and subtracting things, but what is your critical analysis? How do all of the systems layer back to white supremacy? And as people are educated in that way, when George Floyd happens, they have a clearer understanding of what the demand needs to be. Now we're in the backlash. Now we see Moms for Liberty. We see these parents running for school board saying, we want to ban those books that you've been reading.
Right. I've actually witnessed that. Temecula Valley School District out in California have had several heated debates on that. And I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. People were like, it's getting violent.
And why? Why do you want to ban the 1619 Project, right? Because you don't want young people emerging to being adults who understand, right? Understand the root causes of all of the ailments in society, because then they will deconstruct those things, right? And then you'll lose money, you'll lose power. So they're trying to go right to the root and make sure that as we continue to push for the policies, reproductive justice, fair pay, ending the school to prison pipeline, that there's not voters that will support that because they've been miseducated.
Right.
K-12, miseducated in college, banning Black studies, banning, AP courses on African American history, or stripping it of its political analysis.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do.
Now, you just mentioned about the prison pipeline. Say that again, that point.
The school to prison pipeline. That's been a major issue in Moms Rising.
Please break that down.
We know that many of the systems that exist in the school are created to funnel children into prison, right? When we look at they call them SROs, school resource officers. We say it's police in school.
Police in school, yeah.
Police in schools. You had kindergartners being arrested for misbehaving.
And mostly Black and brown kids.
Black and brown, disabled, LGBTQ. There's a disproportionate punishment happening in the schools that would involve law enforcement, right? You got teachers calling police into the schools around things like many people saw the horrific video of a young woman, a kid who pulled out a cell phone. And the teacher called the police into the classroom, and the police officer body slammed her.
Oof. Yeah, that shook me to the core, because at the time my youngest daughter was still in school, and I don't know, well, I do know where it would have took me had that been my child. How does Moms Rising help with those situations?
So this is the kind of work that we were already involved with on the school board and the parent association level. We release toolkits and we do teach-ins for parents to say, this is a school to prison pipeline, that your school has no counselors, that your school has a part-time nurse that's only there on Tuesdays, but there are 10 police officers in your school. That's the school to prison pipeline, right? Nobody who could provide health or care is there, but people who can arrest are there. And so we would train them and teach them about this and help them to change the rules in the school, work with the administration to shift and deconstruct that school to prison pipeline at every joist that existed within it, especially removing police officers from school and investing in what we call social emotional learning and trauma-informed care. These kids should have counselors. They should have therapists. There should be somebody in there that's teaching how to do mindful meditation to resolve conflict, not somebody who's going to bring in handcuffs. And so we had already been doing that work year in and year out, before the attack on critical race theory and before the attack on the books. We were working with parents to change the school environment.
Mm-hmm. And has it been successful so far? Because I've seen just so much conflict lately. I guess it's a reflection of the country, really.
What you're seeing is the backlash because it was extremely successful. There's one school in Baltimore, which we love to highlight, and I can send the link so we can share with the audiences at a later date, but they replace school suspension with a meditation room, right? So this is K through 5. So these are little kids, right? They had a high suspension rate because of arguments and fighting and misbehaving. And instead of having that detention, which is like prison, instead they brought in a yoga instructor, they brought in mindfulness instructors, and you would go and you would learn how to breathe through it. Right. You would learn how to identify if a child was having a panic attack, right? Yeah, all the time. It's like kids are bad, having a panic attack. In this one school, they saw suspensions decrease. There were no more arrests after this. And the overall school environment improved tremendously. Fighting, arguing, all of that went away when you come in with a trauma-informed care approach. So it is working. It was powerful. We were also working on school food. People may remember Michelle Obama's initiative. Right. Kind of got in there with the school food piece, but it was the overall healthy environment of the school, which was very successful. And now we're in the backlash where people are trying to put more police in school, have more discipline because of the success of this.
Okay, wait. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk more about the backlash that's happening with Moms Rising. We'll be back, y'all, on The Frequency.
Thank you.
Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Welcome back to The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my special guest, Moms Rising Senior Vice President, Monifa Bandele. Please join us again. I have to say, you've given me so much to think about, but one of the things I wanted to talk about was the backlash that you guys get, because Moms Rising, okay, we covered reproductive rights and your progress with that. We touched on wages, but we didn't get into it. But the school system is like my heart is in it right now, because I love to read. The banning of books is just driving me crazy. And then I didn't realize that Moms for Liberty is a backlash directly against what Moms Rising is doing. So
absolutely.
How are you guys handling that backlash?
It's a backlash to Moms Rising. And I want to also state the full gender justice movement. Women's organizations, especially a lot of Black women's organizations like Sister Song and New Voices for Reproductive Justice. You always see that there are Black women at the tip of the spear. And then there's multiracial organizations like Moms Rising. We work to amplify that very strong and radical work that's happening. But this is white backlash. This is white fear that happens every time Black people in the United States help to walk the United States forward towards what is written on the paper, right? Towards this vision of a multiracial democracy where everyone has human rights and can live and thrive. And so whether it's Reconstruction, where we, in the Civil War, we see the backlash of like both the KKK and the Daughters of the Confederacy, right? They don't just come with one strategy. And so now what you're seeing is on January 6, 2021, the outrage from Black voters who really, along with many women voters, stopped fascism. The backlash was that insurrection you saw on January 6th. But as a part of that, you see groups like Moms for Liberty emerge, which I consider to be Daughters of the Confederacy 2.0.
So do I.
Going and doing that groundwork, stirring up fear, like, oh, you don't want your child to come home sad about being white. We have to ban these books. Like what? So they're the ones that's doing the groundwork for the big groups that you see that do and I won't say big because they are a minority. Right. But, you see them highly vocal groups that led the January 6th insurrection. These movements are connected. That's connected to Moms for Liberty. And so they're coming, backlashing on our progression on all fronts.
I mean, how do we stop that? Or we just continue to just continue to just do the work, right?
Absolutely. I always think about, we started talking about our parents. I'll go back even further, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we think about our grandparents and we think about the tens of thousands of Africans that not only escaped enslavement, but then joined in the Civil War to lead in self-defense to free their family members, we keep going. We keep right. And I try to remember that so that when this backlash comes and, our members are calling, they're saying, I went to a school board meeting and we got yelled at and cursed at by these crazy women showed up and, we band together, we take a deep breath and we say, okay, but we're going to keep moving forward because this is nothing in the face of some of those things that we've been through. Yes.
Right. Some of the things that our parents have faced. When you say that, when you brought up the screaming part, I had to think about the safety of your organization, the people that are on the ground. Has there been any incidents where you felt, endangered?
Absolutely. There have been school board meetings, especially some of the things that have been happening on the ground in Florida, where our members have just said, I can't go to this meeting. The people who are showing up are unhinged. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of being doxxed.
They might even be armed, right?
They may be armed. These are states where, it's open carry. And so we collectively as an organization will say, for certain things, no, we won't go to that. We'll wait till there's enough people that can go together. These are calculations that we didn't really think about that much, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's okay, train up a member who wants to get active in the school board and let them go. But now you have to think about violent attacks, just like when people were going to vote, like our parents' generation, generation, because these people are violent.
Yeah, they are. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you guys are out there protecting yourself and staying safe. All right. Because you're absolutely right. We do have to continue and keep going and doing work. And when you think about it in comparisons to what our parents went through, it's the same. I want to say, what they went through was far worse, but what we're facing now is even.
It is this. I'll say this, Dee. It's the same, but it's more gaslighting. Like what our parents went through, what our grandparents went through, it was really clear. It was clear. No, there was no fancy language. You had Bull Connor. You had the Alabama governor saying very clearly, I don't
right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there was no confusion. But now the narrative, is so confusing and complicated, not to us per se.
Right.
Black people are like, oh, you anti-woke, that means you anti-Black.
Right.
We know what that means.
We know what it means, right.
But the larger public, where our parents in the activism of the 60s, they were able to capture the inspiration and imagination of the larger country because it was very clear. They're like, they could say, look, we're being treated like this because we're Black. And everybody's like, yeah, because the guy got on there and said, I don't want you here because you're Black. So it's very clear. So it's very similar, but it's also a lot more complicated. It's a lot more sophisticated now because there's so many euphemisms for Black people, for Black kids,
Right.
All the language around criminality basically refers to us. We know that, but a lot of people don't. So that makes it more difficult, but it's in many ways, it's very similar.
It's very similar. Okay, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about how someone like me joins Moms Rising and other people, you know what I mean? And what we can do in our community. We'll be back right here on The Frequency.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Back right here on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my special guest, Monifa Bandele. Please join us, sister. I'm so glad how you broke down, because I couldn't find the words for it, but you're absolutely right. It is more gaslighting now than it was back there. It was very, very clear. And now it's very, very, like you said, the language involved. Mm-hmm. I started thinking of different examples of that. And it must be frustrating for our youth to even, think about getting, I know I've seen movements with the youth in particular with gun violence, yes. Which has to be something else that Moms Rising handles, within the school. But I've seen them mobilize for that because it impacts them all immediately, as opposed to the other issues of the books and the way they're restricting the education. Or another thing I see them mobilizing for, and I'm talking about the youth, all of them, with the, the trans rights and the LB, I'm messing up, you know what I'm talking about, the community.
Justice.
I'm trying to figure out how we can get more youth involved in activism, and how someone like myself can join Moms Rising.
Yes, the young people are hugely active, right? I mean, when we look back to 2020, and there had never been in the history of the country a demonstration, a mass mobilization in all 50 states on the same day. And that's what happened Juneteenth, the weekend of June 19th, 2020. And many of it was youth-led, many of it was led by, people our age, multi-generational. Right. But there were some amazing organizations out there like the Black Youth Project 100, many of the Black Lives Matter chapters or members of the Movement for Black Lives, which is an ecosystem I'm in, were organizations that had like a lot of young people in them. And so, the seeds that have been planted, are constantly growing. But people can get involved in Moms Rising by going to our website. You can go on there and join. You can click to get our emails, follow us on social media. And especially if you want to show up and do things either on choice, make sure access to reproductive health care, or you want to get involved in the school board, we have a place for you. We constantly need members. We need activists. We need a lot of people all over the country, especially in the South, in Florida. We know the moms are out there. We have a bunch. We need more. Just reach out to us and get involved. And as far as young people are concerned, yes, March for Our Lives are the young people who are doing stuff around school safety.
The school safety.
And then I don't know if you've seen them, the Sunrise Movement.
No, I haven't.
Climate justice. I mean, young people are out here and the planet is dying, y'all. And y'all not doing anything about it. We're going to be left with it. And we see them in great numbers out there as part of a youth organization called the Sunrise Movement. So for young people, Black Youth Project 100, March for Our Lives, Sunrise Movement. And then, of course, you can join all the other organizations, too, because we want young people as well.
That's right. Well, I'm going to sign up today for my Moms Rising, because this is, the work you guys are doing is incredible. And
And look at the poll that you have up, right?
Right.
Most of the people who seek abortions are already mothers. That's one thing that people don't understand. 6 out of 10 people who go to seek abortion access are already mothers. This is about family planning. This is about family economic security. A lot of times it's also about health, and your own personal health. And so these are decisions that need to be made between you and your doctor. And 85% of people who are polled agree with that.
Right.
So you're letting this silent minority really advance fascism, really advance control over other people's bodies, right? So, join Moms Rising, because a lot of times we agree with these things, but we don't get active. And then the people who are active on the other side, they're mobilizing. So absolutely join.
Speaking of mobilizing, what is Mom Rising doing in regards to 2024 election? I know the work is being done right now, and there's so much voter suppression going around from state to state. I know you guys have got to be deep involved in that.
Listen, I know I sound like a broken record, but can we say backlash again? Another thing from 2020 was record-breaking voter turnout. Okay? Record-breaking for Black people, especially in certain states. Record-breaking for young people. Record-breaking for women. These are people who were infrequent voters prior to going into that 2020 election, when we were really going door to door, texting, calling people, saying we got to stop fascism. We can't have a second administration of this, because we're going to go, you think we went back 25 years? We're going to go back another 50 years, right? And the turnout was monumental, right? Immediately you see states passing laws to restrict voting rights. Now you need ID. Now we've closed half the polling sites. So you got to drive half an hour, but people in your rural town don't even have cars. Now you see, what I'm saying? So it's checking all these boxes. Backlash. It's all connected. Moms for Liberty, insurrection, voter suppression. These things are because 2020 was like, whoa, right? The fruits of the labor of our parents and our grandparents, people will shake this whole system up. We got to stop it at every turn. So what we are doing is fighting a lot of these voter suppression laws. One of our favorite organizations, I hope you have them on, is Black Voters Matter, with Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And just fighting on the ground in the states, suing these state legislatures and these governors that have just put ridiculous voter restrictions in place. And it's throwing out people's voter registration because they haven't voted. Like, where you do that at?
Right.
You registered. Why are you purging voters from the rolls? And guess what? When you see who they're purging, it's us. So we are preparing a serious outreach. We targeted something like 8 states going into 2022, which was up from the amount we did in 2020. And so we want to really get deep in states like Georgia and Mississippi as well, to educate and turn out voters in 2024. And we're planning now. We're staffing up. Staff in new states. We have staff right now in 18 states, but we're going to have staff in 20 states in the next few months. Because people need someone to talk to. You can't do this remotely, right? You got to be in there talking to people, going to the parent association meetings, going to the churches and meeting folks and finding out, what do you need to turn out? And you got to partner with those organizations that are already there and already on the ground. There's always this misconception that Black communities, that there's some kind of void in organizing and political power. No, we got folks there. How do we bring people together and amplify what's already on the ground?
Exactly. Whew. You're dropping us some knowledge right here on the frequency. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to wrap it up with you, because I know you got things to do. We all got things to do, but I just have a couple more questions in regards to, organizing and activism, because I'm hoping that what people take from this conversation today in particular is that they want to get involved more. They want, they want to be part of those people on the ground. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Frequency.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Back right here on the frequency, and my guest Monifa Bandele of MomsRising. Monifa, you have given me so much to think about, and I'm hoping that, you know, from this conversation today that we get more people involved with your organization and some of the many organizations that you mentioned today. And my particular focus is to try to get the youth back in there. I mean, I know we have a lot of them doing, you know, different things, but I really want that sense of community to come back, like how we were raised by our parents, you know what I mean, from the 60s and 70s. I feel like we've lost a little bit of that in some ways. But I know it's, you know, it's a different time. It's a different era for the kids of today. But one of the things I believe that with MomsRising is that, which is the perfect name, because it seems like motherhood in particular, like you guys are really mothering these issues. You know what I mean? Bringing that woman's perspective in there, and the strength of Black women in particular, bringing it in there, even though I know it's national, multi-generational, but it just seems like we need that. We're missing that. And I just want to know, like, what else could we be doing? Like, what else could the average person do to help move things forward?
Well, I want to say two things really quickly, because I think there's two pieces. One was, you know, how what we had before in terms of our community and our movement was disrupted. There was a backlash then, right? Mm-hmm. There was COINTELPRO. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
The other piece was that our communities were flooded with what they call the war on drugs, right? And so you see the beginnings of mass incarceration, which tore our communities and those institutions apart. Right. So you say, you know, why we don't have the close-knit, I'm like, mass incarceration. I know by the time I was coming up, right, in the 80s and 90s, so many people were getting caught up. In New York, it was the Rockefeller drug laws, right? And all over the state. I mean, you just had scores and scores of young people being shuttled away, you know. And so one of the things I see young people are really active on is this fighting, you know, mass incarceration and the heavily policing of our communities. And I think we get back to where we were once we dismantle those systems. So I definitely, you know, wanted to say that piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it really was. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And the backlash to that power, I think of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Greenwood, right? As a community, as being prosperous, and we're coming together and we're building power. You know, they just went on and just burned it to the ground, right?
To the ground, yeah.
But there's other ways you can burn it to the ground through policy, right? Through starting communities of resources, through mass incarceration. It's another way of burning to the ground, right?
Absolutely.
And so we got to lean in. And then the second piece I wanted to say, because I think it becomes overwhelming and daunting. People are like, oh, well, do I have to do what Monifa's doing? Do I have to do what Dee is doing? One of the most powerful things I saw in 2020 at the height of protests, right, were people who did the things that they could do where they were. You know, in June of 2020, one of the ways that the protests were being attacked, we had a curfew in New York. I know they tried it in New Jersey and some other places, and the police would when the curfew hit, would kettle the crowd so you couldn't leave, and then do these mass arrests of protesters. And because they were arresting so many people, they couldn't be taken in like police cars. So they had commandeered MTA buses, and day in and day out, we're putting thousands of people on these buses to go to central booking, et cetera, depending on the borough. And so the bus drivers, right?
Right.
The organizations, they're not even in the meetings planning it. All of a sudden, one day we see when they're putting people in the buses, the bus drivers get off the buses. They refuse to drive the buses.
Right.
And then you see a tweet come out from their union, the Transit Workers Union. When I talk about it to this day, I start to get teary-eyed. And they said, we work for the people of New York. We carry the people of New York to and from work. We do not work for the NYPD. It was a short tweet.
Wow.
And they had to let the protesters go because they can't drive a bus.
Right.
And then you saw the same thing in Minneapolis, and you saw the same thing in Oakland because their union is national. And the bus drivers went to their own union. They're like, I'm not in BYP 100, I'm not in BLM, but I'm in the Transit Workers Union.
Right.
And I don't like what I'm seeing.
Exactly.
And I want my union for us to take action. And they did on a set of days. They refused to drive the buses from demonstrations. And then the cities had to scramble and figure out something else. And you saw the mass arrests went down sharply.
Right.
You can do something wherever you are. If you are a teacher, if you work at a bodega, if you are a nurse, wherever you are, you have power to raise your voice. Yes, we want you to join Moms Rising, but everybody does something.
Right. Right. That's perfect.
Association. Do you live in public housing?
Right.
Your tenant association is a base of power.
Right.
In your public housing. So I always want to take the pressure off of people. You don't have to leave what you're doing and do two jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Voice, sensibility, talk about social justice where you are.
Right.
And then that helps all of our movements.
You're absolutely right. That was I have to end on there. You said your voice, wherever you are, your voice has power. You could start there.
Everywhere.
That's amazing, yo. Oh, it's been such an honor to have you on today. You've given me so much to think about, and I hope the audience can take away with that too. Using your voice has power wherever you are. You don't have to go. You know what I mean?
Look at the Amazon workers. I mean, you in the factory, you make coffee. Look, people are realizing your voice has power wherever you are.
Wherever you are. That's a perfect ending. Thank you so much, Monifa, for the work you do. The whole organization. Thank you for spreading your knowledge today. Coming on. I really appreciate you. It's been an honor to have you on, and thank you. I hope you come back. And we gotta talk about some more things for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Monifa Bandele, Moms Rising, right here on the frequency. Catch you guys next time. And thank you for joining us.